we give ourselves these outs and excuses as to why we can't, but really a lot of the time it's why people delay starting a business and they think it's because the product's not perfect. It's not. And I say this because now I've, helped so many people build businesses, and it all comes down to like your mindset, right? Like a lot of the time it's got nothing to do with the product. It's got to do with either your fear of failure, or your fear of judgment, like that's what it all comes down to. If you can get past those, or not even get past them, just understand that's part of the process, and you're never gonna succeed unless you take risks and try. It's just what you have to do. It's the price of admission.
Quickly though, before this episode starts, I've got a 10-second favor that I'd like to ask you. The majority of people watching this podcast haven't yet hit the follow button. I can't tell you how much it helps. The show gets bigger, which means we can increase our production, and also allows us to bring in some of the best guests that you want to see, while allowing us to continue to do the thing that we love. Thank you so much for your time. Dylan, welcome to the podcast.
Mate, I'm excited. That 5-second countdown got me G'd up.
How do you feel right now?
Mate, I'm so nervous. I've never done one of these before. I'm excited, man. We just had a little bit of a chat, and I love what you're doing, and I respect anyone that's putting out a podcast and putting all the work that goes into it. I know how much work that takes, and it's the best, man. I'm excited for you to see what comes.
Brilliant. Let's do it. Well, I just want to have the guests understand you a little bit before we get stuck into it. If you could give an elevator pitch of who you are, what you do, and how you're contributing to the world, what would that sound like?
Yeah, so essentially, to keep it pretty short and simple, like I'm just the guy that started an e-commerce business about 5 or 6 years ago. And I was just happened to be an extremely successful business. My first ever business we launched was called Happy Skin Co. As I said, about 5.5 years ago, we launched that business. We've done well over $40 million in revenue. We've got retail partners all around the world. So obviously that changed my life. I didn't grow up with a lot of money. I was a kid growing up in the suburbs of Southwest Sydney. So had to put pretty much all of my life savings into starting that business. And yeah, it worked in a obviously forever life-changing way, which was exciting. And then have a podcast myself, Life, Money and Love, where we interview people, other founders. Doesn't even have to be business owners, just anyone who has rejected the 9-to-5 and realized that they're going to build their life on their own terms based on what they really want to do, rather than the system that, gets enforced on everyone. And then probably where I spend most of my time at the moment is with my e-com mentorship program, Viral Brand Builder, where essentially I teach people how to do what I did with e-commerce and build a brand, change your life, and start living life on your own terms. So yeah, that's, I guess, me in a nutshell.
I love it. And what made you kind of want to move into living life on your own terms? Like, what's the context of your early years that kind of led you to go, you know what, we're doing this?
Yeah, well, for me, I was always a really ambitious kid. I always thought the sky was the limit. I always, whatever I thought was the coolest or the biggest, dream to chase, that's always what I wanted to go after. And obviously growing up in the suburbs, going to public schools, I didn't really have people in my life that had started successful businesses, or I didn't really have any role models in that sense. So while I was in school, I thought the epitome of success was to be a lawyer. So again, that's all I could dream, because that's the what I was living in. So,
and you don't think that anymore?
No, well, I tried it. I got accepted into uni with early entry, which was good. I didn't have to stress out for the HSC too much. They accepted me prior to all that. So my whole high school life, I expected I was going to go be a lawyer, wear a suit every day and argue with people. But I got to uni probably about 2 weeks in. I thought, this isn't exactly what I expected. And then sure as, 2 months later, 3 months later, I got to the first time for uni where I had to do exams, and I just thought, there's no way I'm going to do this to myself. I was depressed. I realized, the life of a lawyer wasn't for me. And yeah, I took a big change of path from then. I was going to take a gap year and defer the rest of my uni. It was a double degree of law and commerce. I was going to go back the next year and just do the business side of the degree. But in that time, I was so, I guess, disenfranchised by the university experience. And I've never been the type of person that can just follow the rules just because. I always ask why. And I always feel like if I know there's a better way, why would I do it that way? I've never been good with authority for the sake of authority.
That gets you in trouble.
Yeah, a little bit. I was never a bad kid, but I would just always be really staunch on my morals. And if I thought there was a better way to do something, I would do it. And I would sometimes get in trouble with teachers, just questioning them or saying, hey, why don't we do it like this? And so that got me in a little bit of trouble, but I was a pretty good kid most of the time. So yeah, from the uni experience, I'm like, what's the opposite to the opposite to law and going to uni for 5 years, but still with the context of me being that super ambitious kid, always wanting to achieve as much as I could. I thought, what would be a really fun, cool, interesting life? And then I don't know why it popped into my head, but I thought maybe I would be an actor. And again, I didn't do any drama at school or anything like that. So I did a couple little short acting courses and kind of fell in love with that, got accepted into a full-time acting studio. And I spent 5 years living life as an actor, had an agent, auditions, film stuff, all that sort of jazz, crying in a room multiple times a week. All that
Don't worry, I do that
stuff.
too. It's fine.
Yeah, just no cameras there. But then, realized I wanted to take more control of my life in terms of like my own destiny. If you're an actor, you're always asking essentially to be hired, pick me, pick me. And, you can control that more than I thought. I was probably 24 years old when I stopped acting. But I just wanted to have more control. So I shifted back to business, actually worked in sales for a little bit. Didn't enjoy that either, to be honest with you. Like you never know what's your future until you try things. You got to tick things off the list and realize either, yes, that was for you and you fall in love with it, or at least, that's what you don't want to do for the rest of your life. So I was lucky enough though, while I was working in the corporate world, I met a guy who started an e-com business on the side. That was the first time I ever heard of someone starting an e-com business. Like I remember this kid from the suburbs. I didn't realize what was possible, what the world of business really was. So meeting him, it really changed my perspective. And then from then on, I started looking into e-commerce. I really got hooked on like kind of the Gary Vee train and his mindset back then. This is probably like 7 years ago when I first really started getting into personal development, into podcasts and starting researching e-commerce and business and realizing, hey, I don't have to follow this, pre-laid out path. I can create my life myself based on what I want to do. And I don't need to ask anyone for permission.
The world is very malleable.
Exactly. Oh, dude, we're all creators of our own universe, our own destiny. Like a lot of people it's just a lot of people don't realize how much control we have over our own lives because it can feel at times like we don't. But if you just take a step back and decide what do I really want versus what's expected of me, a lot of the time you realize it's very different to what you're doing right now.
Where do you think that ambition came from? Because sounds like it's a fire that was just...
Yeah, to be honest, like I think with my ambition, I genuinely think I was born with it. I think it's a blessing and a curse. Like I've got friends that, have a 9-to-5 job and they're completely fulfilled and they love it. I just couldn't do that for whatever reason. I was born with this, inner desire to do as much as I can and achieve as much as I can. But I think in terms of what shaped me as a kid, I grew up living with my mum, like in the granny flat at the back of my grandparents' house with my mum. So it was the four of us until I was about 5 years old, and I was the center of everyone's world. I was spoiled kid, not spoiled as in like showered with presents and stuff, but just showered with love. You know what I mean? Always told I could. Everyone believed in me. Everyone wanted to support me. So I think that really laid a foundation of me like believing in myself and having like a high self-worth. So I think those were kind of the two things, but yeah, I think for me, I couldn't live any other way. I've tried at times to, settle down or, try to do things the normal way. But it just never worked out. I never felt fulfilled. And I guarantee there's people listening here that can relate to that, but maybe they've just never met the person or had the push to make them, take that leap of faith and really start building life or, in the light that they want it to be.
You mentioned that it was your grandparents, so 2 and then 4. So I'm guessing your dad wasn't around.
No, I didn't meet my dad till I was like 15 or something like that. Yeah.
Wow.
Yeah. Got a good relationship with my dad now, obviously, but I didn't. There was a time that I had the opportunity to meet him, maybe a couple of years prior, and I backed out. I got scared and nervous for whatever reason. Yeah, it was a lot. It was a lot, man. I remember just running back to my room, telling my mom I can't, I'm crying, I'm too nervous, and the poor guy, had come to meet us near my house, and so would have been pretty crap for him, man. But he understood. I had the right to do whatever I wanted to.
Yeah.
So yeah.
Those things take time.
Yeah, my mum sacrificed so much for me. So yeah. It was, I had all the love I needed.
Do you feel like that led you to feeling like you maybe need to give back in some way or do more than just the standard because there was so much sacrifice for you?
It's not something I've really thought about too much, like probably on a subconscious level, yeah, but I think mainly for me, like I said, like it's just in my blood, it's in my DNA. I have no other option to be like this, and I don't understand why. Like, I guess my dad's had a pretty successful like career in terms of like he's been like the CEO of like a big club for oh, God knows, like probably 10 to 20 years. But he worked his way up from like picking up glasses at and then like bar manager and all that stuff. Now he's a CEO of like quite a large club, but my mum's not an ambitious
nightclub or like
anyway.
a social club?
Like an RSL sort of thing, but not like that sort of vibe. And like, it's surprised, like, yeah,
some big money in that kind of stuff.
Businesses than you realize, yeah,
those pokies, they don't fuck around.
They do not, man. It's a license to print cash. So
actually,
done pretty well. But yeah, it wasn't like an ultra ambitious person. So we're not sure where it came from. It just is.
I love it. Do you think that is there a downside or like a dark side to that ambition that you have noticed that you've begun to try and temper, or where are you sitting with that sort of stuff?
Yeah, of course. Like, when everyone's at home at 5:30, 6 o'clock, having dinner with their partner, and I'm at the office till 9:30, 10:30 most nights, obviously there's a big sacrifice in that. And sometimes as a business owner, like when you're putting in the really long hours, or like everyone does, you're going through a bit of a rough period and you're problem solving, trying to figure out all these things, and you can't really go home until you fix a problem. There's moments where, you think to yourself, I wouldn't say rightly, but you think to yourself far out, like, I wish like almost at times, like, why do I have to be like this? But like, I wouldn't change it for anything. You know what I mean? It is who I am, but there's a price to pay for that as well. Like I'd say I work far more than most people, but it's like, I'd rather work, 14 hours a day for myself than 8 hours a day for someone else. And obviously, like, when you're in business, you can make infinitely more money than you can, just trading your time for money. And I don't say that in a judgmental way. I was doing exactly the same thing. But as long as people know that if that is for them, and starting a business isn't for everyone, but for the people that do want, the freedom to create their own lives and live on their own terms, that, hey, it actually is really possible. And I'm one example, a kid from, the suburbs of Southwest Sydney. Many of the brands that I'm working with and mentoring now started in the same position as me. Now they're doing, 100, 200K a month from their ecom brand. So as long as people realize it's possible, you don't have to do it, but you do have a choice. And if you do want to try and create that life for yourself, then there's a really clear path to do it. You don't have to settle for what our parents or what school taught us.
Well, I think with what our parents in school taught us doesn't actually work very well for most people anymore. Like the life that our parents grew up in, it was pretty easy. There was like, I wouldn't say easy, but there was like the framework of, cool, you can get a solid job, and with that solid job, you can earn enough money to buy a house, and then you can like raise a family, and everyone's God-fearing, and it's like, it all kind of just is going to work pretty well for you if you just
100%
get your bootstraps up and give it a crack. Now you try that, you're still fucked.
The world's changed so much.
You're so fucked.
The world's changed. I feel like, our grandparents would have bought houses for like 60, 80 grand. Like my parents probably bought a house for like a couple $100,000. Like now it's like, unless you're like, you cannot buy a house in Sydney unless you're like in a couple and you both earn like, $100,000 a year each. Like otherwise it's impossible. So that traditional, Australian dream they talk about where the average, I don't know what the average wage is, probably 70, 80 grand, something around that point. Like there's no chance you're going to be able to buy a property on your own. Even hard enough when you're with someone. So do you really want to have those luxuries in your life? You've got to do more than our parents did. It's just reality.
It feels like it's kind of rigged against us in a weird way.
The system wasn't created to make you or me happy. It's created to make people that built the system a lot of money.
When did it change? I don't know. I would love to feel like what it felt like 50 years ago and now, and see what happens.
I think it's always been the same, man. The system was created back from like, the Rockefellers and Henry Ford created the 5-day work week. All these processes were built, during the like industrial revolution. Like it was built to and it was necessary, right? To progress humanity forward. But nowadays, I feel like because of social media and everyone's more connected in that way, you could argue we're obviously less connected at the same time, but people talk about it, people share their experiences. It's much harder to hide things and sweep them under the rug. And I think the really good thing about our generation and the young kids coming through is that we do question things. You know, maybe we've had it really easy. We haven't had like big, you know, famines or world wars to have to go through like everyone talks about. Our generation,
right, just in Australia, we've been, you know, we're an island in the middle of fucking nowhere.
Yeah. So, yeah, man, I don't know. It's and it's fine, I guess. Like, I don't get too depressed about, you know, the way it is. Like, I've decided, like, so many people will say exactly what you said. You know, it's stacked against us. It sucks. I can barely pay rent and stuff. And it's like, I understand that, and I really empathize. But complaining about the system isn't going to change anything. We cannot change it. And like, unless you feel like your calling is to be one of the people on the megaphones at the protest, you know, starting petitions and whatnot, unless you're going to be that person and
still unable to pay rent.
Exactly. You know, and you won't, but like, unless you feel like you're going to be that person, right? Like, you're better off focusing your time and energy on it. Just accept that's the way the world is and think about, okay, I may not be able to change the world, but I can change my world.
There was something that I heard recently, and I'm probably going to butcher it, but I quite liked it. It was something along the lines of, if you want to change the existing structure of the world, you need to create a new structure that makes that existing structure irrelevant. So the idea of just like megaphones and all that shit, it doesn't really do anything because you're just like hitting a brick wall. But the smarter approach would be to come up with something better that everyone in their selfish intent will just go to because it's better.
But realistically, the only like majority of the people that are able to create a system or create a platform that really has impact, like, and this is like, I guess, the people that are against capitalism won't really like it. But if you really want to have a proper impact on the world, like, a lot of that costs money and influence to really make change. Like, unless you're, like I said, going to be one of those people, which is most likely going to get ignored anyway, like, if you really want to create change, you're going to need a level of wealth or at least a level of freedom to be able to do that.
And that comes with coming up in the existing system.
Exactly. So,
yeah. Interesting. I want to loop back. You spoke about acting and your progress from law to acting to business. How did acting influence your approach to like business and like leadership and all that?
Yeah, I think there was a couple of really good things about acting, and I do not regret that at all. I loved my time in acting. Like, where everyone else was at uni, I was going in and, as I said, making myself cry in a room for several hours a day.
Same, dude. It's crazy.
There's a few things. I think the first thing that was really important for me as a human being, and in terms of like growing up and maturing, was obviously part of acting is like getting in touch with your emotions, right? And being able to experience the highs, the lows, the ups, the downs, sad, excitement, and just completely freeing myself to go there, whether it be sad or whether it be like full joy. So getting in touch with my own emotions, I think as a guy where we're not really, you know, taught to do that, you know, suck it up. That's fine. Like, dude, if I watch a sad movie now and I cry, like, it's the best feeling in the world. It's just part of the human experience. So,
quick side question after that. Keep going, and then I'll ask you a question on that.
I think for me, getting in touch with my emotions was a really positive thing. I also think, obviously, when you're acting, you're playing these characters, you're putting yourselves in different people's shoes and from all different walks of life. So I don't think you really do that in day-to-day life very much. So really, I think it helps you build empathy and understanding for people in other situations. And then my specific acting technique that I learned was called Meisner technique. A lot of it's based off like reading and reacting to human behavior. As we both know, like only 7% of communication is actually the words we speak. The rest of it is body language and tonality. So it's like we're hyper aware of, you know, the tiniest little changes in human behavior. So you get a really good bullshit radar and you can really feel and sense what someone's thinking and feeling, because we spent so much time, you know, laser focusing on that as part of the craft. So I think those are the main ones that I've really taken forward into business, into life, into relationships.
So what's my body language saying right now?
You're just having the time of your life. You're relaxed. You're like, this is easier than I thought it was going to be. I've got a sick suit on. I'm feeling good.
Do you want to know the story behind this suit?
Tell me.
So I'm slightly inspired by Lex Friedman.
I love Lex.
But not purposefully. So Today I woke up and went to court.
Okay, yeah.
And I went to court because I got 2 parking fines at the front of my house that I, by just pure principle, did not want to pay. And I've never been to court for fines in my life. And I thought, this will be a fun new experience. Let's do this and see what happens.
How'd you go?
It was $200 in fines. And they ended up charging me, they said, you can pay $70. And
okay, so $130 off. There you go.
It's probably not worth my time by the time I think about, like, you know, getting there, fucking around, leaving.
And just like thinking about it yesterday, planning it. Like, for me, what I've really learned in, and this is something that like is really difficult to, like, it's easy to understand, but really embodying it is different. It's like, you know, because I'm so principled and have really strong values, like so many times I want to fight situations or stand up for myself in situations in business or in life because I know that's right and that's what I believe. But really, like, sometimes you just got to take the L and move on because the energy and effort you're going to spend fighting a problem isn't really worth it anyway. So, but that's difficult when you know you've been wronged or you feel like you've been wronged. You want to really stick up for yourself. But when you start getting a little bit busier in life and you have a lot of different things on your plate and you're trying to manage all that, you can really easily get sucked down and spend too much time fighting this negative thing that's making you angry or frustrated or upset. When the best thing for yourself objectively would be to just accept that, as frustrating as it is, and move on with life. And spend your time, you know, moving yourself forward rather than fighting this little battle. So
I got another fine sitting there, and I'm like, I probably won't fight this one. Same deal, man. It's fucked. I'm getting hustled by the council at the moment for street parking. Next time, get a house with off-street parking. Yeah, there's just I have to park on the street just. We don't have off-street parking, and it's a complete nightmare.
Do you guys not have like little stickers on your car?
We do, but what they do, there's this like stupid street sweeper that comes through twice a week, and you have to play musical chairs of like parking on either side. So I'm constantly just getting like fucked by this street sweeper, and they follow the street sweeper and fine everybody. It's like the most annoying thing ever. Anyway, so that's why I'm fired up. Little side note before we move on, talking about crying in movies. Have you seen Marley and Me?
Yes, once, and I won't watch it again.
Did you cry?
Go through it. Of course I cried. But that was like, I watched that ages ago before I was even fully in tune with my emotions, and I still cried, and I'm not watching it again because it's just too much pain. It's too sad.
Dude, I've got this thing where I will watch Marley and Me if I'm like about to date a girl. I'll watch Marley and Me with them. If they don't cry, done.
Then that's it.
Sociopath.
Yeah.
Because I remember there was one girl that didn't cry, and I was like, I don't know about you.
The two movies that get me the hardest every time is obviously The Notebook. Not the love story, like when they're young, but the older.
Oh, that last scene where they're just holding hands. You're like, stop it!
Gets me every time. And then have you seen? Is it called? I think it's called About Time. Have you seen that? It's got Rachel McAdams and.
Is it From Time? I don't know.
No, About Time.
No, that's a Drake song.
Yeah. But,
I know this one where it goes back in time and it's a whole thing.
When he goes back in time and he's like, has to play with, it's his last time with his dad.
Oh my God.
That gets me, every time. I was like, no, bro.
Dude, I've only watched. You go.
No, I've only put myself through that twice. It's pretty painful.
Yeah, I was going through a breakup, and I, unbeknownst to me, like watched that movie, and by the end of it, I'm just like in a ball, crying my eyes out. My Lord! Yeah. I just did not expect that one. Oh, great movie though. Great movie.
It's the best. But,
the approach going from acting and then into your sales job into this potential business, it seems like I don't know, maybe internally you've not been as clear cut with your decision making, but with the way you communicated, it seemed like you just kind of knew, and you're just like, I'm going to do this and I'm going to go into it and I'm going to fucking crush it. Was that the case, or were you just actually just scared as the rest of us, and just happened to work?
Every time I made a decision, I felt like this is what I should be doing. But then for some of them, a few months in, you realize, no, it's not. But that's like, you're never going to know unless you try things, right? But sometimes people will try something and they won't want to, one of the quickest ways to success is if you know you're on the wrong path, quit fast. And that's something I've always done. Like, I'm pretty instinctual and intuitive. And if I know something doesn't feel right, I'll set a new plan and go after a new goal. And I think that's why I've been able to be so generally happy in life, because I'm always and most driven by my big goal in life. That's always what drives me, and a lot of the time dictates how I'm feeling day to day. So it's like, okay, if I feel like that's what I want to do, I'm going to go all in on that. I'm going to invest in that. And then if in a month or 2 months or 3 months I feel like it's not for me, then I'm not going to beat myself up about it. I'm not going to, also at the same time, I'm not going to lock myself into doing it for another year, 2 years, 3 years, just to see what happens, because our time on earth is so limited. I want to maximize that as much as I can. Mm. So then just figuring out a new plan, and then like each time it kind of flowed on organically until I found business. And then I realized now, like, I heard this Robin Williams quote when I was acting, and it was, if you don't need to be an actor, don't be an actor. And I remember thinking, like, no one needs to be an actor. Like, what does that even mean? Like, I don't need to be an actor.
It's a calling, right?
Yeah, but now I know with business, it's like I can't do anything but I've got too many ideas. I've got too many things I want to do. Like, I will never not be in business again for the rest of my life. Like, I found my vehicle to express myself, and yeah. So that's something that but you just got to keep trying things until you find your calling.
Do you read a lot?
I do read, yes. I used to read more. This year's probably been one of my least reading years in the last 5 years or so, just because of being so busy. But I think, like, life comes in seasons. Sometimes you're absorbing information and learning and seeking inspiration, and other times it's all about implementing what you already know and learning through doing. And I think as we move into a new year shortly, I'd like to cut out some more time so I can get into reading. But I've just been so busy with actioning, and that's the thing with like reading and learning and all these things. Like, that's great, and that's absolutely part of the process, but don't get stuck in that phase. Take what you've learned and go try it, go do. You'll learn way more by actually doing something.
Yeah, I feel like I was thinking this recently. I'm a bit of a pseudo productive person. I'm like, I'm reading and I'm listening to podcasts. I'm doing all this shit, but I'm not doing anything. I'm just.
It's a trap you can fall into. Like, everyone does it at certain points of their life, but yeah, catch yourself. And like, I would go from book to book to book to book, back to back to back to back. Earlier on in kind of my personal development journey, and that because you feel good, right? I've read 20 books this year. How great's that? Yeah. But like, what have you implemented from all the books that you've learned into reality, and how much you actually remember from each book? So I'd rather spend more time on one book, summarize it, and the key takeaways that I want to take from that book. And then actually, for every book I read, what 2 to 3 to 4 to 5 things am I going to actually implement into my life from this book? And if you don't do that, it doesn't matter. You may as well just you're wasting your time. Knowing something, reading it is one thing, but I'd rather read like a quarter of the books, or even I'd rather master one book and truly absorb and live the principles, and just do one book a year rather than reading 10 books or 20 books and not doing anything with it.
Depends on the book, though.
Of course.
And I guess maybe you have to read widely as well to figure out the books that you don't want to read anymore.
Yeah. I always I'm pretty I feel like everyone knows the type of book that speaks to them. You know what I mean?
Cooking for Dummies is my favorite one.
I haven't dabbled in any cooking books myself. But yeah.
I love it. Well, with that in mind, I'd love to understand kind of your strategy to maybe identify the market opportunity that you had, and then how did you have the confidence to execute on it?
In terms of identifying the product for Happy Skin Co., all we did was study the market, look at the brands that were succeeding, and we identified a really clear pattern that beauty was a big industry that was exploding at the time we launched in early 2018. beauty was exploding, but then even more specifically than that, DIY beauty was exploding. And we saw multiple brands taking concepts that you used to have to book an appointment and either go to a doctor or a dentist or a salon to do the procedure. And then if you can create a product where people can do that procedure essentially themselves from the comfort of their home at their own, pace, at a time that suits them in a much more affordable way. Like for these products, like for example, for our IPL, like our hair removal handsets, like they're buying our hair removal device for the price of one, maybe two, like laser hair removal sessions in a clinic. But if you're doing laser in a clinic, that's 6 to 10 sessions you're going to need to do. And then you're going to need to do top-ups even after that. So
seems like a
no-brainer. Really obvious. Like seeing the brands that had succeeded before us gave us the confidence because we knew they were just, 2 guys or 3 guys in some instances. They didn't know really anything about beauty before moving into that space either. So I just think like once you've seen other people from a similar position than you do it, then why would you doubt it? Like there's a really clear roadmap you can follow. And then like I think another big part of that as well, I've always been a kid that had a lot of self-belief, but when we talk about reading, one of the books that changed my life was obviously reading The Secret.
What did you like about it?
It's like I realized my whole life I'd been living the law of attraction and I didn't know it. Like I'd been very lucky with life in a lot of ways, like school, sports, even relationships. And I thought about why was I so lucky to achieve all these things? And while I might have thought I was the smartest kid when I was at school, I wasn't necessarily the smartest kid. There's definitely people who are more intelligent than me, but I always just figure out the best way to do things. And like for me, I really think a big part of my success is I've always been a massive daydreamer, right? Everyone daydreams. But for me, the only thing I would daydream about, because I'm an ambitious person, all I would daydream about is my goals. So me achieving or doing all the things I want to do, whether it be getting a date with a certain girl, whether it be, a lot of it in school was coming first in this exam. I tell everyone I'm going to come first in this exam. Like, sure, well, whatever. And year after year after year, I'd top nearly every single exam.
What happened when you didn't come first? Were there any scenarios where you said you would come first and you didn't come first, or you didn't get?
Yeah, there would have been, I guess, not many.
How did you respond to that when it happened?
Oh, like I wasn't bragging to everyone I'm going to come first, but I just whenever I did, it seemed to work out. So maybe I should have been more vocal all the time. Yeah. But I don't know, man. Like, I don't know. I just that's just what happened for me. And then when I realized, looking back, even like I grew up, red hair, freckles, pale kid. Like I should have had way less friends and been bullied way more and done way worse with girls, but I didn't. And I think a lot of that comes back down to like self-belief and confidence. And like, I think that's one of the most important things you can build in yourself, or when you start to have kids, build that in your kids. So I think that really impacted it for me. And once I read The Secret, I then watched it on Netflix as well. I realized, holy shit, like I'd actually been living the law of attraction my whole life unknowingly, just thinking it was daydreaming. Then I thought, okay, let me put this into practice. And the first time I really strategically put the law of attraction to practice was building Happy Skin Co. And we absolutely blew all of our goals out of the water.
So, and you said that confidence has kind of always been there. It was built up from a very young age, and it was a, part of the blessings of your life, would you say? Or did you cultivate it?
It was both. I think, growing up or surrounded by so much love was definitely a big part of it. But then I think as I moved into school, like I said, I was pale, skinny, redheaded kid. Like I should have been bullied way more. I shouldn't have had as good a time as I did in school. So I think I cultivated that as a protection mechanism, like everyone does. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Like or almost not fake it till you make it, but like portray yourself in a certain way. And then like you start to catch up with it and it starts to build from there. Definitely a lot of it was like a protection mechanism that we all create. But like if you tell yourself a story inside your head long enough, you'll start to believe it. And then once you start to believe it, the people around you will start to believe it and the world will start to see it.
I think I understand that on a not on a emotional level, but on a like intellectual level. But emotionally, I know personally I do the opposite. I go the other direction. It's as though I feel like I don't want to say anything because I don't want to be a fraud. And in the process, I create my own destiny in the negative.
Massively.
But I don't know how to change it.
We just, that's a really good question. Like a lot of people, do the same thing. And I thought, like, why did I do that? Because, okay, let's just say something happens at school and there's one or two ways I can take it. And one of them is makes me doubt myself, question myself. Am I not good enough? Like, why would I put myself through that? It's like when you're presented with a situation, there's two ways you can take it and you have a choice of which direction you go. Why wouldn't you tell yourself the positive story? Why would you let that spiral into negativity? Like, if someone's rude to you, right, a lot of the time it's because they're going through an issue of themselves, and that's a reflection of themselves. Maybe you don't really understand it at that level while you're in school, but I think on a subconscious level, I realized that, like, I don't need to let certain situations affect me in a negative way, because I know who I am and I know, you know, that what my values are, and I know I really truly do care about people, and I'm you know, I know who I am. So if you have belief in yourself and who your values, like what your values are and what your moral code is, then why let anything else negative like get in there? Like, if you just give it
an inch,
a little,
an
inch, you just give it an inch, it will spiral out of control. So it's like, don't let it start. And like when you mentioned breaking up with girls, I think this is the first time consciously, when I was probably maybe like 16, 17, I went through like my first like breakup, like of a serious relationship. And I remember for 8, like, you know, you break up with them, even if you're the one that breaks up with them, like you're lying in bed at night and you're thinking about them, or you see something and it makes you think about them. And it was driving me crazy, man. It was driving me crazy. And that was at that time in my life when you're in school, you know, a breakup's the worst thing in the world to you. And then I just realized, like, hey, this isn't making me feel good. I'm just going to not let myself think about it. Like if that girl pops into my head, I'm just going to change the subject immediately, consciously. And like, that's kind of what I did. And then I realized how quickly I started feeling better. So from that point on, if there was a negative thought that popped into my head that wasn't, again, that, you know, wasn't going to be productive in any way, and I know exploring this is only going to make me feel bad, why would I do it? So I created like almost this banned list in my head. And I think one of the most important things you can do when you get a negative thought like that is to get it out of your mind straight away and just make yourself not think about it and think about something else. And if you do that for a little while, very quickly you'll be able to put these negative thoughts away, and then they stop coming into your head because the way you see the world changes, right?
It's interesting. I've got a new rule that I've recently implemented over the last couple of years, where it's if I do have a situation where there's a breakup or there's a situation that just mainly on social media that makes my stomach drop. You know that feeling you see something and your stomach drops?
Oh, 100%.
I'm ruthless now. I just mute, block, gone. Like even if I still care or talk to them, gone. I don't care. And the process of being out of sight, out of mind, it's as though it helps to heal. It's as though every time you got this little wound and you just keep ripping this fucking Band-Aid off, but you don't need to think about it. You don't need to be constantly have it in your face.
100%. Like there is a danger with that, like in terms of like, if you take that too far and you don't have any element of self-awareness, you're going to, you know, turn into this extremely egotistical person. You're going to miss all your flaws. You're not going to see all your own personal opportunities for growth. And obviously, like my like one of my biggest goals in life is just to become the best person I can, right? In all facets of life. And that means being more patient, being more caring, being more giving and helping people, right? But like for most people, they are in a position that if anything, they're too insecure. They doubt themselves too much. They have limiting beliefs. If you can just work on that and stop and then just as like an elimination diet sort of style, like something makes you feel bad, unfollow them, right? If a certain thought pattern is something that you keep coming in, whether it be about money or about a guy or about your weight or about your body, unless it's something you can go and actually do something about in that moment, then go and do it, right? But otherwise, if it's a thought and you know it's just going to spiral you negatively, just change the thought in your head straight away.
If mum pisses you off, just get a new mum. Yeah, but
pretty much.
No, I'm just kidding. But you're exactly right, and I think that.
And look, there's probably psychologists that'll tell you, no, that's not the right way to go about it, right? I'm not an expert, but I know it worked for me, and like. This isn't a bullshit foundation that I'm like, acting like I'm really confident and have a lot of self-belief. No, like I genuinely
do, great.
Right? And like, and that's just the way I've done it. So like, I know, and obviously the consulting and mentoring I've done over the past few years is obviously about e-commerce, but a lot of it, what I help people with as well is like, getting past those limiting beliefs and making people realize like you can create, your life and your sense of self exactly how you dream it, right? You can create that in reality. So it's like, you can't skip that step of working on yourself if you want to go and achieve and, create a life that you've never had before. And still now I'm far, far, far from the finished article. I've got so many things I want to improve on in business, in my skill set, in my personal life. But I don't let my shortcomings that I have now dictate how I feel about myself, because it's like, it's this continuous process from now until we die. So it's like, as long as you're doing things to improve your life and improve yourself, then don't judge yourself for being on the journey.
Some journeys are faster than others, and maybe the uphills are early and then there's downhills 20 years down the track. We don't know. We really don't know.
Well, like, think about what's like, if you don't take that view, then what's the opposite?
It's a good point you make, because when you said you've got two options to think about a difficult situation, you're right. You're 100% right. And I'm sure there's a lot of listeners that will resonate with that exact thought process.
Yeah, and I found out only this year that I've got ADHD, because, like, again, I'm not like some off the wall scatter or anything like that. So I think there's been a lot of underdiagnosis of ADHD. But like, because of that, I think a big part of it, I've never been able to, things I don't want to do.
Can't do.
For me is so painful. Yeah. It's like the worst thing ever. Like, I hate doing it so much. So it's like, I think because of that heightened, wanting to avoid things that don't feel good, part of the, addiction to dopamine in a certain way, you just want to do things that make you feel good. I think subconsciously, before I was even really aware of, self-development and self-improvement, I created, this way of thinking in my head to make me feel as good as I can, as often as I can. And like, isn't that what life's all about?
I mean, it's, I think positive delusion, I'm not saying you're being delusional, but like positive delusion in some form is a superpower.
100%. And like, an element of it is positive delusion, right? You can call it that. I think it's a very fair way to frame it, but it's not delusion. It's
manifestation.
The truth is what you make of it. You know what I mean? Like, you like, if you think you're something, you will become it. Thoughts have power. We all know that.
Well, they do. There's a saying that companies are just the extension of the founder. So if you've got this negative, difficult founder, you're going to have a negative, difficult company. If you've got a, growth mindsetting business that's keen to support and help, you've got a founder like that, you're going to have a business like that. So you got to get your head right, and you got to put on your own life jacket before you can help anybody else. Otherwise, everyone drowns.
100%,
We'll loop back around from the personal development stuff, because I wanted to dig into a few pieces on the e-commerce. You mentioned that you studied the market when you found you were working through Happy Skinco. How did you study the market? Like, what did that even look like?
Yeah, it just looked like a couple of things: spending time on Facebook and Instagram, and like seeing like the companies that come up, listening to podcasts with founders. It's as simple as that. Like, there's no, here's my secret research method. It's just about, what do you want to do? Who's doing it? Go look at what they're doing. If you want to advertise on Instagram, you got to understand Instagram. If you want to advertise on TikTok, you got to understand TikTok. And then like getting into podcast really changed everything to me. Now, 6-7 years ago, when I was at the start of my kind of entrepreneurial, personal development journey, there were a lot less. Like, there were still heaps, but there were a lot less. Now, like, whatever you're interested in, whatever the niche is, whether it be e-commerce, whether it be Lego,
there's a
whether
Lego
it be
podcast?
Sneakers, whether it be makeup, there's podcasts and coaching programs and courses and whatever. There's no excuse now, in the way that education and information has fragmented, to, settle for something that you don't love. Like, that's really, really what I'm passionate about. Like, if you've got this like itch to want to do something more, and again, I my experience in terms of building my wealth, which allowed me to change my life, was from e-com. And I wouldn't say like, oh my God, I'm, in love with e-commerce. Like, I love it. I just want to stare at spreadsheets and ad accounts all day. Not necessarily, but, building a business and having impact and growing a team and being able to earn money for yourself is the most addictive thing ever. And I never want to not have that and not experience that. So it's something I'm really passionate about.
And when you had the idea of kind of DIY, beauty, etc., how did you then find the right product behind the idea, and how did you go with quality control once you'd found the concept?
Yeah, it was the e-com landscape was very different back then. So I didn't even know about sites like Alibaba or AliExpress. We went down a rabbit hole. Wouldn't recommend anyone going down. We're on LinkedIn, contacting product engineers, telling them what we want to do, and having them throw different concepts or potential thought experiments about how we can achieve this. Until I don't know, I can't even remember how we finally found our manufacturer, because we were first to market with the hair removal handset. We had a lot of questions around safety, efficacy, regulations. Is it going to tick all the boxes? Are we going to be allowed to sell it? Is it actually going to deliver the results that they say it will? And that was probably about a 3-month process pre-launch to do that. But nowadays, more importantly than what we did, because that was 6-7 years ago, like, again, there's I've got a lot of different methods and there's sites and tools that you can use to make this a little bit easier. But just 2 free tools is like, you go on TikTok, Creative Center, and look at popular ads. Go on Facebook creative like ads library and search different categories and look at what ads are getting around now. Like, spend time going on Alibaba and look at what's coming up. Message the manufacturers, hey, do you have any new products coming up? What's selling really well for you now? What's like a new trending product? Like, you just got to put the time in on these platforms. There's no secret bullet that click this button and it's going to show you the next big thing in terms of product. It's just spending hours researching it. You got to develop I've obviously got a criteria that I provide to all the students in terms of like, okay, here's your product, it needs to tick all these boxes, here's how to do the research, here's what to look for. And once you have a bit of a framework and the platforms that you can go and do this research on, it's just about spending time. It might take an hour for someone, it might take a week for another person, but there's no skipping that stage.
For sure. And you mentioned looking at trending products and things that are working, and kind of, I think Warren Buffett calls it the scuttlebutt method, where you just get dirty and you're just asking questions and you're calling reception and you're just grinding, you're just doing random shit just to stir up the dust and something will land. But how have you gone about handling copycats as the business is built?
Yeah, I actually had someone on the podcast couple of days ago, we're talking about this exact thing, because he was pretty much first to market in his space too. How I handled it isn't how I would handle it now. I spent way too much time thinking about it. I spent way too much money on lawyers. I spent way too much of my own time fighting these people. And sure, yes, we took down loads and loads of businesses that were stealing our content, infringing on our IP. We got settlements out of some brands. But at the end of the day, the amount of money I spent on lawyers and the amount of time that I spent, of my own, headspace and focus, where I could have been focusing on, making our brand even better, coming up with our next new creatives, coming up with, our next product. If I spent all my time on that, it would have been way more worth it, because the time you spend on it, it's negative. You're in a low vibration. You're in defense mode, and while you have to do certain things to protect your IP and your rights, don't let it emotionally get to you. You know what I mean? And I definitely, like, by the time you pay expensive lawyer fees, even when you get a settlement, you look at it at the end of the day, you're like, yeah, that's pretty much what I've spent on lawyers over
lawyers
the last
are a
year
scam,
anyway.
bro.
So then yeah. See, they do earn good money, so I was on the right track thinking about that. But like, to be like, you want to be a lawyer because you want to earn money. Okay, so it's 5 years of university plus your PLT. Then you're going to get, maybe you'll get a grad role, and then it's going to be at least 10 years before you're a partner, and then that's when you can start earning good money. Like, I guarantee, and I don't mean this like in an egotistical way, but like, of all the people that I studied at law with, who finished their degree, like, there's no way any of them have earned the same amount of money as me. So it's like, you don't always, the traditional way isn't the best way. Like, if you're like a young kid out there, and I say young kid, 18, 19, 20, any age, but like, if you feel like you don't really like the way that, most people do, and it doesn't really appeal to you, then like, use me as an example. You don't have to follow the black and white path. Like, you can create it in your own way. And a lot of the time, like, if you're working in alignment with your own passions, then you're going to be far better off. And if making money is your goal, then you're going to probably make more money doing that anyway.
Honestly, man, right now, when it comes to lawyers, I'm just like so off it. I've had back-to-back just poor advice, and the costs have cost me multiple tens of thousands because of just like stuff that you would expect Like, you don't know. So you're hiring some guy that's $500 an hour to know. And then when they don't do it, you're like, what the fuck? What do you mean?
Yeah, that's the hard thing with hiring lawyers as well. Like we've had a great solicitor that's done like, most of the work for us, but like at certain times you need to hire different people in, and like, who are you to tell a lawyer that you think, you would go a different direction if that's what they've studied and done their whole life for work? So it's like, yeah, they're spending so much money, and it's like, you kind of, once you've hired them, you've got to trust them, even if you feel like maybe it's not right. But yeah, so I've been burnt at certain times, or not want to say burnt, but let down in certain instances where I'd worked with certain legal professionals. I would try to avoid, if you're in business and things are getting legal, I would try to avoid that unless absolutely necessary, because it's a waste of time and, more importantly, money.
Yeah, definitely. And yeah, it's a lot. It's a lot to think about. I mean, it's not fun at all. And moving on the product stuff, do you feel like now where you're at with the business is doing well, things are going in a great direction? Are you in a position now where you're thinking, what next? Like, is the product moat kind of hard to maintain, and where do you take it from here?
Yeah, like in terms of, for me, we made money pretty quickly on, which meant I could hire a really good team to run the day-to-day. And in terms of like product development, like we've just released I think it's our 4th IPL with like the craziest technology that we've had, and that's doing really well. And like, it's good. You release a new product, the first week it's 7% of sales, then it's 12, then it's 16, and then the last week it was 27%. Next week it's going to be 35%. So it's like, it's really rewarding. There were a couple options for us. Do we expand into skincare, or do we really knuckle down and own the beauty tech space predominantly, like just really become the best in market in at-home IPL hair removal? And we went down that rate. So that means like we're constantly working with our manufacturers about the innovations coming out, the next round of technology that we can test and invest in. And we own multiple of our own patents and design patents and everything like that, so we can stay ahead of the competition, because it is a really ruthless competitive market. But like, for people just starting, like if you're at the position where you're really like at that point and you're pushing new product development all the time, like you've done really well. I think like it doesn't need to be that complicated though at the beginning.
Yeah, you just kind of have to get into it and get it done.
100%. People will procrastinate because the product's not perfect, or they'd want to do it like this and they end up doing nothing. But 95% is close enough.
Do you think that it's better to just be moving forward and giving stuff a go and potentially being in the wrong direction, or waiting until you've just fucking nailed it?
What do you think? Which option do you think I would say?
I would say get into it.
Yeah, 100%, man. 100%. Because you're going to learn so much more doing that as well. And it's like, once you start, like your second version of the product can be the one that's like much closer to perfection. And then the third one, you're going to improve it even more. It's like we give ourselves these outs and excuses as to why we can't, but really a lot of the time it's why people delay starting a business, and they think it's because the product's not perfect. It's not. And I say this because now I've, helped so many people build businesses, and it all comes down to like your mindset, right? Like a lot of the time it's got nothing to do with the product. It's got to do with either your fear of failure, or your fear of judgment, like that's what it all comes down to. If you can get past those, or not even get past them, just understand that's part of the process, and you're never gonna succeed unless you take risks and try. It's just what you have to do. It's the price of admission.
Yeah, it is the price of admission. I think right now I'm going through it, and we can talk about it off air, but fuck me.
Yeah.
And I'm going, I was a very conservative guy. I would, just chip away little wins here and there, never go too big or too crazy. That was probably a fear-based thing as well. And then I noticed a lot of people in my loose orbit that are cowboys just crushing.
Yeah, see?
So I tried it and then I blew up.
Yeah.
like in the net, I blew up my business very quickly. So I'm like, maybe I went too far in that other direction. Now I got to find somewhere in the middle of conservative and crazy. But I wonder, I think maybe the industry that I've been in predominantly has been events and festivals and shows, and they're very, very expensive. It's a tough industry to be in, right? And you can sell 1,000 tickets less than what you thought, and you've just lost $100,000.
Yeah, that's ruthless, man.
All right, cool.
It's not an easy, it's not an easy business model to start with, I wouldn't think.
No, and for some silly reason, I thought it'd be a great idea.
But like you see, you've tried it, now you know. Like you wouldn't know if you didn't try. Like I don't regret trying law. I don't regret trying acting, because otherwise I would have been wondering what if my entire life.
Yeah, exactly. You just got to get through those times. Speaking of challenges, what was the biggest challenge you faced early on in Happy Skin Co?
Yeah, I think for us, it was probably early on, it was the competitors. Because we, and this was like the negative side of, having, the news and Daily Mail and all these different media publications, Yahoo and whatnot, covering your success and doing podcasts and speaking at events. Like, you're a young entrepreneur, you think that's the right thing to do, which it definitely was. But like, okay, we've just done all these interviews and have, our success, plastered all over the news.
Everyone coppers you.
That means, you're on the radar of everyone who wants to make a quick buck off your name. So it wasn't like there was this one competitor or two competitors that were really good. It was like hundreds of like, smaller ones ripping off your content, getting really cheap products and selling it. And I think that was one of the challenges that affected us to an extent. But we rode that wave, and like probably 2 or 3 of them exist now still today.
Yeah, wow. So would you say that you would, in hindsight, if you were to play that out again, would you have preferred to just focus on, you mentioned it previously, but just to reiterate the point, you would have preferred to let them die on their own and you focus on product?
Yes,
versus
exactly.
Going down the legal battles?
Exactly, yeah. Took up way too much time. Yeah.
How are you to know? How are you to know otherwise? Like,
I spoke briefly to the High Smile guys about this at an event, and like they said, because obviously they were a few years ahead of us at that point, and they go, yeah, man, it's annoying, but you just got to move on. And it's like, when you're in it, you're like, no, like I want to fight it. Like we're speaking about, you've got this, like, it's a moral thing, but the best thing you can do is focus on what you're doing and keep innovating, because then they'll always be behind you.
Have you tried hiring hitmen?
Not yet. Maybe that can be your next business. I'll send some people your way.
The friendly hitman.
Yeah, there you go.
Service with a smile. Yeah, it's a great game though. 100%. That's a bloody great game. So, you mentioned long-term goals earlier as well, and it seems to me that those goals might be not Happy Skin Co related. And I just kind of want to double click on that and talk through what are those long-term goals you're now working towards?
Yeah, my long-term goals is like to, I think back to when I was a little kid and all the dreams I used to have, right? Of achieving all these different things. And like, I want to, now that I've kind of grown into the man I am today, like I want to do as many cool things as I can while I'm here. I want to, have the opportunity to tick off as many things as I want to off my bucket list. I want to have the freedom to choose. I want to wake up every day and be able to have fun. And fun doesn't always mean like, obviously I work heaps, man. I'm in the office till like, as I said, 9:30, 10 o'clock most nights. But like I do that so I have the freedom to, do what I want. And I think like my purpose is just to become the best version of myself that I can. Like I want to leave no stone unturned. Like when I go one day, hopefully in a very long time, then I want to like have no regrets. You know what I mean? So it's like, I want to put myself in a position where I can do that. Like, I think in the truest form of being a human being, like I just want to express myself and do what I want to do. And each of my businesses play a different role. Like Happy Skin Co's, where I've made a lot of money and that's funded a lot of everything else that I've done. Now the podcast is where I get to connect with people and have really interesting conversations about, growth and business and there's an element of giving back in that too, the amount of value that we put out. And then my mentoring program, like it started off when I was consulting. I was like consulting to other, $1 million brands and whatnot. But that really, it wasn't really enjoyable. Where we're really pivoted now and next year, it's what I'm really going all in on. It's like, remember, I was that kid from the suburbs, like helping people buy back the freedom in their own lives and change their own life by starting a business, because most people, one, they don't believe they can, two, they don't know how, and they don't know where to start. They don't have a clear framework to follow. So helping people do that is the best, man. As that kid from the suburbs, like helping people create life, the life that they've always dreamed of, like I have, dude, it's the best thing ever.
Yeah, brilliant. So just supporting the next generation of people where you can, and improving the overall outcome.
100%. And everyone, this is a question I get asked a lot, and like maybe it's because I'm so busy, I haven't had time to think of it, or to be honest, when I ask people, when they come on the podcast, sometimes I ask them, like, do you feel like you found your purpose? Like, every time I've asked it to someone, they've all said yes. And then I bet you if I would ask half of them again in 5 years, it's something different. So it's like when I say purpose, like I mean like true life purpose. My life purpose right now, I know there'll be some big battle or cause or hill that I will be willing to die on and put everything into, and I'll be all in on that. But right now, it's to become the best person I can. So I'm ready for that challenge when it comes up one day, whatever that is. And to do that, I know I need to level up my skill set. I need to level up my mindset. I need to create wealth, and I need to be free so I can do that. But, I think realistically my purpose is, like, everyone talks about like a destination, but I think one of the best and most important lessons from school, it's like, it's about the journey, not the destination. And that really is so true. Like right now, my purpose, I have big things I want to achieve, but right now my purpose is just to enjoy life as much as I can. So I make my decisions not based on how much money I can make. I make my decisions on what life am I going to enjoy waking up for and excited to do what I have to do every day, because I'm not the type of person that wants to live for the weekend and get 2 days off or 2 weeks off and do a holiday. Like, I want to create a life where I'm truly excited to get to do what I do every day.
Yeah, I get that for sure. That's I've noticed that there are a lot of people in the world that do live for that weekend and do live for that time off, man. And it just seems hard. It's but you also pick your hard, right? You pick what you want to do that's difficult.
You don't have to enjoy every part of the process. Like, obviously sometimes I'm like, I just want to go home and sleep at times, but like, exactly, life wasn't meant to be easy. Like, if you want to, what's that saying? Like, and hard times create strong men, soft times, like, whatever. You know what I'm talking about. But it's like, in our own way. I don't mean that at a societal level. Like, if you want to, experience things you've never experienced before, you're going to have to make sacrifices to do that.
Definitely. The you mentioned as well, kind of working long hours. I don't know if it's maybe just my experience, but I don't have the motivation to work long hours, and I'm sure there's things I could do with the business that I've been running, but I just don't. And I think when I hear that, I would think to myself, what are you working on? Like, what are you doing? Are you just knocking down 12 hours of system development, or are you putting out files all day? Like, what's taking up your time?
Yeah, well, you probably haven't found the thing that, fires you up enough. For me, it's like, if I'm just sitting around doing nothing, I know and this is, this is a negative thing. And you asked me earlier, is there any negatives? Like, I am still too hard on myself for taking time off and resting. Yeah. It's hard, man. Like, it is still hard. I love
the leisure. Life for leisure.
I do. I love it too. But if I haven't earned it, I drive myself crazy. If I feel like I haven't truly earned my break on my time off, if I know there's still more I want to achieve, then it is difficult for me. So my life isn't for everyone, but like, I at the same time, I work way less than other people I know, and I'm way happier. Like, some people have bigger businesses than me. They work longer hours than me. This thing, I take my weekends off most of the time now, like nearly my whole weekend. I didn't used to do that. But, if I'm working from, say, 8 till 9, 10 at night most of the days during the week, then I've earned my weekend off,
When do you work out?
Usually in the mornings at the moment, which I've never been a morning trainer. I've done martial arts for about the last 7 or 8 years. And that's been off, unfortunately, for the last little bit. Hopefully it'll go back early next year. And that's been at about 8 o'clock. I'll start training 3 nights a week. So that was good. Those nights, either 2 or 3 nights a week, I know I've got to be at training by 8. So it's like those nights I'm out by 7:30. So it's like I've created a system that limits how much I can work at the same time.
When do you sleep exactly?
I sleep all right. I got a Whoop.
I lost my charger, so I'm trying.
And that actually really did help me. Like, seeing the data. I in a weird way, not in like a bragger way, I would never speak about it, but like for a while there, like I kind of like prided myself on like getting 6 hours sleep a night. But dude, it's not healthy long term. I'd say on average, recently, like I'll probably go to bed around 11:30, 12 at night. and then I'll wake up
at 7,
7:30. Like if I'm really tired and it's a day that I don't need to train in the morning, like sometimes I'll sleep to 8 if I have to. Now, 2 years ago, 3 years ago, I never would have done that. But something that really helped me is I'm not a morning person, as in like, some people wake up and they're like, up at the crack of dawn and they get their best work done in the mornings. For me, like I'm here late all the time and I get my best work done at night. That's just the frequency that my body's on. I'm a night owl. So it's like, okay, if I'm going to be working that late, I can't start work at like 6 a.m. every day. It just won't work for me. So accepting that I'm different and like everyone has their own unique workflow and times that work for them and not judging yourself for that.
For sure. Yeah, I go through those battles a lot and I'm sure many of the listeners would too. Like there's this get up early, seize the day, and I feel like when I'm energetic and in the morning, I do crush it, but it's been much easier to default to just when everyone goes to bed and I'm up until 2 a.m. doing stuff. But I swear if I could figure out how to just get the mornings right, I'm talking 4 or 5 a.m. mornings, I'd be doing a whole lot more because it gets to say 6, 7 o'clock and you've banged out the day like crazy. You've just done everything.
That's great. Sometimes I'll do that as well and then it feels really good. But for me, when I've got really important stuff to do, my brain wasn't working. Like I couldn't do, like I was waking up and trying to do like the most important stuff first. And like before I go into the office, but it's like my brain is slow in the morning. Like all I could do was reply to emails anyway. But, when everyone goes home and it's just me in the office 6 o'clock, that's my peak. You know what I mean? I'm going to just smash out a few hours of work then.
Yeah. With you mentioned you do martial arts a bit. How has that impacted your way of approaching business and your life?
Dude, that's been massive for me. My mentor, the guy who's led all our training, we're so lucky. His day job is a high performance psychologist. So not only do we get like obviously the self defense aspect, and like, when I like ours is not like UFC. It's not. We don't train barefoot. We don't train on mats. Like we train, 1-on-1, we train 3-on-1, we train with weapons, we train defense against weapons. Like it's really,
what is it?
It's like really like old school
or something.
No, it's a mixture of 3 different types of ancient Chinese like kung fu. It's mixed. So it's not just hands. It's not just grappling. It's everything all combined. So there's the self defense element. There's also the spiritual element, which is crazy. Some of the stuff we learn in terms of the spirit, the soul, auras, energy, all that sort of stuff, acupressure. Some of the stuff I've learned with like certain points on your body and stuff is, taking my health to the next level. But it's just been surrounded by, positivity and people that are, going after it and really passionate about, being the best person they can, I think has been massive for me.
Yeah, cool. Well, I think the understanding of, martial arts really helps with your ability to just be calm and confident in a chaos, because you have to be.
Yeah.
You have to be alert and focused, but calm.
And like I instructed for a couple of years as well. So not long after I first became a black belt, probably for about 2 years, I was instructing, and that was really good as well because like, if you really want to master something, the best way to do that is teach it. So spending like 2 or so years instructing was really good. Getting to give back to the art as well was great. It also meant I needed to be out of the office by a certain time, so I couldn't overwork myself. And I've pushed myself to the point of burnout once or twice, and it's not fun. So I think like that was probably one of the most important ways for me. Like I knew I'd be out of the office by a certain time, and there's nothing better than like a complete sweat sesh and you get home and you feel great, shower and you go to bed, you wake up and you feel clear and refreshed and reset and ready to go. Yeah,
definitely. I feel that completely. After this, I'm going to definitely go to the gym and get some shit done. I'm conscious of your time. I had a couple of questions and then I'd love to do a quick rapid fire and then call it.
Let's go for it.
How'd you end up meeting Gary Vee?
Yeah, that's a random story. I don't know if it's random, but so it was just like, everything lined up really well for me. How this happened was pretty out of Out of the ordinary. So I went to see Gary at an event, as everyone does. I was really into going to events and seminars, and really important part of my journey was like those 2-3 years where I was going to events and seminars and really investing in myself.
Do you think the seminars are worth it?
Early on in your journey, yes. I do, because you need to rewire the way you think. You need to hear different ideas, different principles, how people have changed their life, different business models. You really need to. I should probably go to them more than I do now, but I've just kind of lost interest in that space. You know what I mean? What did happen? Yes, okay. So I went to that. I had the VIP ticket, so we took photos with Gary and whatnot, and what they did, obviously, they called everyone up, that night after the event, and they're like, hey, there's this opportunity to do a dinner for Gary. It's probably like $5,000 or whatever. Do you want to do it? And I didn't do it. I've never really been one to really care much about celebrities or whatnot. Like, I think it's cool because like it's a bit of a milestone moment to have those. But like, I didn't really. I'm like, nah. Like, why am I going to drop $5,000 just on a dinner? But so whole next year went through, came around, and I remember thinking, why didn't I was just $5,000? Like, why didn't I go do it? What a cool experience to have dinner with Gary. He's the first person that I started listening to that really changed the perspective in my mind, hearing about, all these different business models and humility and empathy and hard work. And like one of the biggest things that he preaches is like hard work. People think that's all he's about. It's not, but it's like, it really changed the way I saw the world in business and saw opportunity. So I emailed them about a year after that. I said, hey, are you doing dinner with Gary again? I'll do it this time. You can count me in. I'd obviously made a lot more money by that point as well. So it was like, right at the start of business, even though we were successful already, I'm like, do I want to, drop $5,000 by the year round? That was obviously not a big deal.
Maybe you just weren't ready then, and that's okay.
I just weren't ready, but I'm so glad I didn't, because if I did it that year, I wouldn't have sent this email, which would lead to that. They said, no, we're not doing a dinner with Gary. That being said, he is doing this other thing he's never done before. Like, Gary doesn't do small group mentoring or anything like that. He goes and speaks in front of 10,000 people and charges $500,000 or a couple $100,000 for his speech, and he goes on his way. But he wanted to, for the first time, test like small group mentoring with 10 to 20 max. It could be. But it's a process you have to apply. There's several different stages, and then if you get through, you get to do 3 days in Sydney with Gary, 3 days in London with Gary, and 4 days in New York with Gary. So I'm like, yes, sweet, I'll apply. First, put in my application. They sent me the form, all the different parts about you and your business. First, it got approved by the Australian company that brought him out. Once they approved it, it got passed on to Gary Vee's team. Once they approved it, I had to do a phone call with Gary. And I remember I was in my office. This was when we were still out in Preston's in the suburbs. I get a call about 10 o'clock in the morning one day, and it was like a New York number. And I just thought, fuck, this is so strange. I answered the call, and he goes, yo, what up, Dylan? It's Gary Vee. And I was just like, dude, that's crazy. Like, it's just crazy. I've listened to him on so many, I don't really listen to it that much really anymore. But at that point in my life, I was listening to his stuff every day for the 2 years before I started the business. On my commutes into that corporate job, I was listening to Gary Vee. It's like to hear him call me was just like a surreal moment. Then we chatted for about 10, 15 minutes. As soon as he heard my age, as soon as he heard it was like e-com was the niche, and how much money, like how successful we had been, it was like he wanted me there. And then obviously when I ended up going, like, everyone was like 10 years older than me in all these different industries. So it was obvious why he'd be excited to have me as one of the groups. But yeah, by the time we ended up in New York, there's probably like 8 of us, and we're in Gary Vee's office. And there was a moment on the last night we were drinking. It was when he still owned Empathy Wine. We were having a wine in his office, and I just like looked out at the New York City skyline, and I just realized, and this goes back to the manifestation piece and the law of attraction piece, in like, 18 months ago, I didn't have a business. Now I've made however many $1 million, tens of millions of dollars. I'm standing a meter away from Gary Vee looking at the New York City skyline, and it just made me realize like that nothing is impossible. Whatever you dream, you can achieve. And I didn't have money. I was a kid from the suburbs, didn't know anyone with business. And in less than 2 years, I'm standing a meter away from Gary Vee. I used to have like, a couple thousand in my bank account. Now that's changed. Like, it's just life. Like, there's no limit to life. It's only what you think and what you can see. If you can see it and you believe it, you can make it happen. I guarantee you.
Bro, I have so many more questions I want to ask, but I think that's the perfect way to end it.
For sure.
Brent, thank you. Man. Thank you, Dylan. I appreciate you coming on the podcast.
No worries, man. Good fun. Hopefully we can, I'll see you one time in person. You'll have to wear that suit again though. That's got to be a It's got to be your new personal brand, like Dex.
I love it. All right, my man. Thank you.
Sweet, bro. All right, done.